Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I wasn't always a gospel singer to begin with, but I'll be sharing that as a part of a testimony tonight. But since I became a gospel singer, I've learned a lot of songs, and some are my favorites, and I'm going to sing one of them tonight. This one is called "I Met the Master." Like a babe when it cries for its mother, like a child I was helpless, alone, and I met the Master. Now I am one of His own. For all things have changed when He found me. A new day broke through all around me. For I met the Master. Now I belong to Him. Like a blind man who walks in the darkness, I have searched for the light. Then I met the Master. Now I walk no more in the night. For all things have changed when He found me. A new day broke through all around me. For I met the Master. Now I belong to Him. I met the Master, and I belong to Him. It's wonderful to be mastered by our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm glad to be here tonight. And my name is Ernie Yuzicapi. The last name is not always to some easy to pronounce. I guess it took my wife for about 3 months to get it all down pat, and when she got it all down pat, I said, I'm going to make it a lot easier, so I picked up two Scandinavian names. One is Semetizovic, and the other is Vergafit. But that didn't work either. But I'm better known as Blind Ernie for that reason. That it's not everyone that pronounces my last name, but it's good to be here. It's good to be in God's presence, and again, I believe that God is among us tonight. We serve a great God. Well, I'm originally from the good neighbors to the north here. I believe in some of the preliminaries that my home city was mentioned. I was born and raised about 45 miles northeast from that city. I was born and raised on the Indian reservation, and but life for me wasn't easy. Well, back home, I was born at home, for one thing, and I believe you and I, one time, before we came to know Christ as our own personal Savior, we had a religion of some kind. I've had one too, and mine's called Indian religion. And in the Indian religion, it's wonderful that, I guess of all religions, that it's wonderful that we're brought up to know that there is a God up in heaven. It's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. And only according to the Sioux Indian terms, which I'm that of the Sioux tribe, and only we call our God the Great Spirit. And if I should if I should say that in my native tongue, we say Wak Honk Honka, which translates as Great Spirit. He's our God. And I grew up at home. And I was born right at home. But I guess for some reason I was always a problem kid. And the first problems I guess I sort of run into, I was born at home, and at first they thought everything was going just fine. But when they took notice of me, I was dead. And you know, back home on the reservation where I'm from, you know, horse and buggy days didn't quit till 1965. That's just recent. And we didn't hear the gospel till in 1955. That's just recent too. Basically, we were all Indian religion. I'll tell you what Indian religion consists of. There's healing songs involved. We do our own healing practicing, physical healing to the physical body, and so on and so forth. And also we pray curses upon people, some of it that we didn't like. And the Indian religion teaches you that when you are a part of it, that you're sort of an racist, and because we feel that when the white man didn't come here first, we were here, and there's still a great deal of teaching about that still today on the reservations. That hasn't changed over the years. Well, back home where I come from, where pretty much we kind of took spiritually, we thought, and physically we took everything of our own. And so when I was born, and they found out later, a few minutes later, I was dead. And so they were taking me in a wagon and team of horses about 5 miles down the road to the morgue, and when they're pulling into the driveway, I showed signs of life. So they took me to the hospital, and with the help of blood transfusion, I came out of it. But then, and they thought that problem was solved after when I came back to life. But there was more problem occurred shortly later on. I was noticed. You know, I have come down with paralysis. For one thing, I don't know what happened there, and some say it's the blood transfusion had a lot to do with it. I had a brain damage. The brain damage was on that side. And so I had poor coordination, this arm, this leg. My feet was more or less, this way. And my hands were twisted. And part of my face, like this, all this was paralyzed. And I spoke with a slur. And I had a mental disability. And when I became 6 years old, my parents was concerned about some education that I should have. I guess that's only normal. So they were going to take me to a special school. But my grandfather objected to it. Well, for the reason, when my grandfather was 17 years old, he was just newlywed back then, and he was told to be a medicine man by the Great Spirit. He refused it. He talked it over with his wife, but his wife told him that we've already belonged to a religion, so we don't need another one. And so she said that one religion is good enough. And my grandfather explained how he was visited by 3 little men in a dream. And so to make that story short, that my grandmother said, whoever you've been dreaming about for these past 2 nights, and you tell me they're coming again in your dream, and when they come, you tell them that you don't want to be a medicine man. And so it happened, I guess. They came in his dream, and they asked him, are you ready to accept the calling? And I guess he told them no. Well, then my grandfather was a rancher at that time. He had a farm and ranch, had cattle. And so these funny-looking men in a dream now, this is Grandpa's dream now, they told, well, when you receive an animal that you might have, I'd like for you to give that to us. he agreed with that. And so when they talked about it that morning, and she asked, "Oh, what did they say?" Well, my grandfather explained about sacrificing animals. And so Grandma didn't say any more. Well, to make the story short, my grandma and grandpa, they raised 13 kids, and they lost 11 of them. And they had two preschooler girls left when these three funny-looking men come to him in a dream, and they said, "You've done well. You've sacrificed all the animals that you have. You've got two of them. And the call of being a medicine man is still on you, and we're coming to ask you to be that medicine man. If you don't, we're going to take those two animals away from you." And then he realized, and he didn't realize at first, but at that point he did. Well, they talked about it that morning, and he told Grandma about what had happened. Well, by this time already, Grandma and Grandpa had lost 11 kids. Some were full-grown, adult, some babies, some preschool age, and they just went on and on. So my grandma and grandpa, they have known a great deal of sorrow. I guess they've been through it all. They've had a hard life. And so he told his wife, the grandpa told his wife, he said, "I'm going to accept. I can't afford to lose these two daughters of mine." So he went into the business. Well, when I became 6 years old, and when my parents were considering to send me to a special school, my grandfather objected to it, and he shared that story. And my dad, I guess, heard it so many times, and my mom, these two girls, one turned out to be my mother and her sister. And so what happened here was they've heard that story so many times, so they were afraid. And my grandfather told them, he said, the reason why Ernie came back, because he's cut out to be a medicine man. If you send him to school, if you put him in the hands of the white people, they're going to kill him, they're going to get rid of him. Because, folks, I grew up when I was a kid. All I heard about the Indians warring the white men and all that stuff, it's sad. It's sad. I grew up with that. That was my bedtime stories when I grew up. And hearing that story, I grew up hard and mean. And it just went like that, and he said, they're going to take him from you. And if you send him away, he said, he's going to die. The Great Spirit is going to take him home. And Dad had already two boys, and he's always wanted another boy, and I happened to be the third one that come along. And so I didn't go to school. I went to the Sundance. They have on the reservation what they call the Sundance ceremony, where they sacrifice animals. We've always had that all along when I was growing up. And so at the age of 6 years old, I went to the Sundance. I went to the totem pole, and I was initiated there. I denied my parents. I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and my parents, I denied them all. Yet to an extent, I was to live with them, but they no longer be my parents and my brothers and sisters. And there, I had vowed unto the Great Spirit that I wasn't going to be education, because that's white man's ways, and all of that. And then from there on, when I was growing up, I spent all of my childhood years with the medicine men, learning all the war songs and the healing songs and the victory songs about how we defeated the white man. And powwow, that's what it's all about. You hear about these celebrations on the reservation. When you hear a powwow out there, and they're dancing victory songs, but what they're doing is they're praising the Great Spirit because they defeated the white man. That's what powwow is all about. Well, I grew up. That was a part of basically that was all of my life. And I was told at the age of 12 years old that by my grandfather, and he told his parents and told all my relatives, at the age of 12, I will be healed or cured, however you're going to put it. And I went to work as a medicine man. And I went to prayer, and I learned all the ins and outs of how to disfigure an individual, how to disfigure his face, get his mouth go up this way, or put blindness upon him, or cripple him for life, or kill him directly. And I've seen it done, and I've learned with it, and yet I knew how to heal a physical body and all of this. But life wasn't so easy, because from some of the things that I seen went on in that practice, I just couldn't believe, well, this couldn't be God. It just went on like this. And at the age of 12, I almost hang it up, but I had vowed to the Great Spirit back when I was 6 years old, if I hung it up, I'd be dead. Because I've seen those that made those vows at the totem pole and hung it up. When the lightning and the thunderstorm come around summertime, I saw them drop dead. And I was afraid of it. And all of this. Well, somewhere along the way, I developed more problems. I come from an alcoholic background. My home, my dad was an alcoholic. Mom drank occasionally. I had relatives that drank. And that's the reservations conditions today, is still the alcoholic problem out there. At the age of 4 years old, I started to drink. And by the time when I was about 12 years old, I was an alcoholic already. And when I was about 15 years old, I started smoking cigars out. And by the time when I was about 18, I was smoking 5 packs of cigars a day. And some more problems occurred, and I was a suicide person, always was back then. Because, I really had nothing to live for. I had the power to do whatever I want. If I want money, if I want material, if I want to get in anything I want, and I just go to the medicine man and I pray with him and kind of put this guy out of business and get all his personal possessions. And that's what the Indian medicine man is all about on the reservation. And this type of practice today is still going on. That hasn't changed. I guess in a sense I had everything that a boy could wish for, but for some reason I had enough of life. I mean, I just didn't feel like living anymore, and I was very suicidal. And in 1961, when I turned 18 years old that fall, I became visually impaired by drinking wood rub and aftershave lotion. See, I was an alcoholic. And so there was more problems occurred to my life. And the following year of 1962, there was more added problems. I woke up one morning and I was in my hometown. I was known as sort of a town drunk, down the street, always, day in and day out. That's all I lived for, was a bottle. I woke up one morning and they were loading me in the ambulance, and they were taking me to the hospital. I was hemorrhaged, lost my voice. They told my parents that the doctors told them I had cancer. My grandmother went to work, and she paid big money to the Indian medicine men to cure me of the cancer, but they failed. And these men that I've worked, that I professionally trained under, they too never went to school, and they hardly talk English. Oh, they talk English if they absolutely have to. But the attitude is this, that we basically didn't have to. We basically didn't have to follow the white man's ways. My grandfather, who was a professional medicine man, he once raised the dead, I remember, as I trained under him. When him and I went to town as a little boy, he used to speak sign language to the business merchants in town. And I used to ask Grandfather, I told him one time, I said, why can't you speak English? Because I said, we're living in a different generation. He told me, he said, that's what you think. He's always told me that these people are all our enemies. Don't you know that? Of course, that wasn't the first time he told me. I grew up with that. Well, then, I was told in the spring of 1962 I was given 4 months to live. Well, I reflect back to the time that where I was supposedly introduced to a God that's up there, a God that I prayed to, a God that I asked Him some things, and He's helped me, but there are things that I asked that somehow He didn't help me. But when the gospel came in 1955, missionaries came in, and even though we in the Indian religion, as the Indian people, were in the healing business, but when the gospel came in 1955 and missionaries came, alcoholics were getting converted. People were getting healed. People were getting delivered. I saw this. And God was doing a great thing on my reservation there in northeast of Regina there, where I was born and raised. But I ignored every bit of it. You see, folks, I believe in the religion, when we're taught of one thing, it drilled into us, and as long as we live, we're going to keep that till we die. That's just the way it was with me with the Indian religion. I'm an Indian, and God made me an Indian, and God gave me my own religion, and God put me here first on the face of the earth before anybody came, and that's the way I'm going to die. I've said that so many, many times. Little I didn't know that I was gonna get involved with the real power of God through Jesus. Now that I didn't know. When I was given 4 months to live, let me just say something out here. Among the Indian religious belief to this day, it still stands that when you die, you go to a happy hunting grounds and you live in a teepee and you hunt buffaloes all day long. Now that's the land that's promised to you after death. I, as an Indian medicine man practicing at home, we took care of our dead. When a loved one is passed on from this life to another, we take care of them. We bury them. We refuse to take them to the morgue. We take care of our own. But as I mentioned, it's a wonderful place where we go hereafter when this Ernie's life is over. But I did not believe that anymore, because my job was, as soon as someone dies, the men, for an example, I was there to bathe the corpse and help to dress it up and put it away for burial. And when they're going to die, I was there to try to comfort them. This was a part of my trainee. As I was, you see, at the age of 20 years old, I was going to be a full-fledged medicine man, receiving the power that he had to do what I want. Well, at that time when I was growing up, I was experiencing that power already. But I did not believe no more about this happy hunting ground, going to a beautiful place where I'll live happily ever after. I did not believe it, because too many times I've watched some of my members of the family as they were going to slip out into an eternity. They talked about, they saw flames, they felt heat. They talked about going into a dark pit, and as they literally screamed, tearing the bed sheets and literally screaming, gone into an eternity. I saw too many of that, and it scared me. And when I was dying in the spring of 1962, first I wound up in the hospital, but at my request, they told me I'm going to die. So they signed me out of the hospital, and they took me home to the reservation. There they laid me in a one-room shack, and I was laid there to die. 2 months passed. We're now into November of 1962. And I knew that the approaching of my life is going to come to an end. After that, where I'm going to go, how am I going to spend that eternity? I did some serious thinking. Alcoholic. I've looked back. I reflect back to my life at the time when I was born and raised. I really didn't accomplish anything. No education, as far as the elementary part of it is concerned, no nothing. And one evening, I got up from the hospital bed that my dad ran for me. I was so nervous wrecked, and I was strapped down. And some friend of mine came over with a drum, and they sang powwow to me, you know, and because they're going to sing me out to the happy hunting ground. I told them I didn't want to. And I told them to reach for this one gospel record, and they put it on a phonograph, and they played it. And there's one song that I had this gospel record for about a year and a half now. And there's one song that I've always liked, and they played it. And somehow, when they unstrapped me, because I told them to, off that bed, and I fell. And I fell on a chair in a leaning position. And at that point, I never knew a word of English. I only said, God, I am told that you have a boy. And he grew up. And he saved people. And he healed people. Let me point out one thing in the Indian religion. That the Great Spirit created me as a Sioux Indian. And I was the apple of his eye. I was the supreme being in the Great Spirit's eye. That the Great Spirit loved his Native American, that there is no such thing as doing anything wrong in his sight. In the Indian religion, there is no such thing as sin. So one of the hardest things that I found was hard to do back then in 1962 was to say, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. I only expressed in my Sioux native tongue, I said, God, I understand you have a boy. He came, and he died. And I heard that he rose again. I heard that he come for sinners. I heard that he saved sinners. And I just went on to say, God, if you're real, if your boy is real, if he's here in this room, be merciful to me, a sinner. I've sinned in thy sight. Come into my heart. Come into my life. Be my Lord. Be my Savior. See, when I was growing up, my dad abused me. You know, he used to pick me up and he used to slam me against the wall. And he trained me to be tough, never shed a tear. So when I grew up, my heart was as hard as nails. I was mean. And I've been to funerals where I saw my loved ones lowered into the ground, and I'd just stand there not shedding a tear. I was so that tough. But that night, I believe, folks, something had happened. I don't know what happened then, but for the first time from these blinded eyes, tears were streaming down to these cheeks. Something happened. Something broke within inside of me. And I was so there, sobbing uncontrollably. Now, I don't know if the presence of God was there that night, but those two guys were serenading me with their powwow drum. They left. And I was there alone, thanking and praising God in my Sioux native tongue at that point. Folks, this is exciting. This is exciting. I went to bed that night for the first time. I slept like a little baby. I was total at peace. Well, you see, when I came down with this lung cancer from smoking 5 packs of cigars, it started when I learned to smoke the peace pipe at the age of 6 years old. And at the time when I was hemorrhaging and the cancer was in these lungs here, I've lost my voice. I couldn't talk. Folks, knowing Christ is exciting. Even that alone, because when I woke up the next morning, I scared myself. Because the next morning when I woke up, I was talking clear like the way I'm talking to you tonight. And strange things was happening to this boy. God began to heal me gradually. One night, I'd sleep that one night and I'd wake up in the morning and my tongue let loose. My memory expanded. All of these paralysis let loose. My left foot went straight. My hands went straight. My memory just expanded. And it just went on like that. It just went on like that. I can't believe it. Scared me. Scared me. And then came the day my daddy was already been a converted alcoholic by then. And my mama too by then, before I was converted. And salvation was very evident in my life. I was converted in 62, and in 1959 my mom and dad was converted. My whole family was converted back then, so salvation was evident. I saw it all around me. But I believe, folks, I run from God at that point till I couldn't run no more. Now here I was. My daddy, he said, I'm going to take you to the clinic. And I had 3 family doctors all of my life. And they did a thorough physical test on me. And I came out positive. I was no longer the retarded kid. And I walked out of there with a clean bill of health, just the praising and thanking the Lord. And the Lord changed my attitudes. And before too long, I was responding, and I was learning real fast of talking English. I was converted at the age of 19, and at the age of 20, I started to talk English. So that's not very long ago, and I'm still learning, folks. Still learning. Great things are happening to me. My grandmother, she gets mad, and she was very put out with me because I've done away with white man's religion. So she hired some of the best Indian medicine men, professionally trained under, and to kill me. I was brought before the tribal council. They took my tribal membership card from a reservation away, and they gave me the walking ticket. But I didn't care. I was crippled for 19 years, but after the 19th year, but man, you know, I was saved and I was healed. So I didn't care, so I just got up and took off and left home. Went to the next reservation and started sharing the gospel. Things were happening there too. Well, then grandmother called me back, I guess, a year later. Here's what she told me. She said, those very men that you train under, you know and I know, they have done all they could with their power to do away with you. But she said, they don't understand why you're not dead. At the annual Indian Sundance worshiping, sacrificing place where I went, to make the story short, I was being questioned by 13 medicine men who I professionally trained under, and they too never knew a word of English. To make the story short, they asked me what kind of a power you have. I pulled out a New Testament out of my coat pocket here. I told them, we all know that this is considered a white man's book. But I told them who was in that book, who wrote that book. And I told them that these signs shall follow them that believe. They shall drink any deadly thing, shall not hurt them. And by some Christian interpreters, informers, they were Native Americans too, they told me, they're all in tears sobbing. He said, go ahead and make an altar call. So at the sacrificing place, at the totem pole, 13 medicine men got down on their knees. And likewise, they accept Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. My grandfather, who was a professional Indian medicine man, in 1958 gave his heart and life to Christ. And just before he died, he told every one of us that he was visited by a man dressed in white apparel with holes in hands and his feet, and he had taken me home. And when these 13 medicine men, during in the latter 60s, I went to their bedside as they lay dying, they witnessed the same thing. The same thing. Well, the question might come up, what happened to the grandmother in 1966? My grandmother was gloriously saved, gloriously converted, lived to be 108. At the age of 100 years old, she was going door to door, leading people to Christ, laying hands on the sick. She had 20/20 vision at the age of 108. Oh, let me go back to another. This is exciting, folks. This is exciting, folks. When I came to know the Lord, when I've given my heart and life to Jesus, my parents was at a revival meeting, and they came back at the time of my conversion. They come home that night. See, I did spend some time at the mental institution there in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. I was in there, the third time when I was in there, I was left to be in there for good. But with the help of, I believe with the help of the Lord and with the help of the Christians praying, I believe I got out of there. And I didn't get saved at that point, but till that came when I've given my heart and life to Christ. When my mama walked into that home, one-room shack where I was laid to die, and my daddy come in and we had a spiritual family reunion. Not only that, I said to my mama, I said, if this cancer kills me, I said, I'm going home to be with my Lord, and I'm going to see Grandpa who left us in 1952. My mama, she's an old Pentecostal woman, And my mama, she prayed a lot. My daddy too. They're old Pentecostal folks. They're full gospel folks back then. I want you to know. And my mama said, no, she said, son, I'm going to ask God to heal you and raise you up and put you on the road and tell this story. And I didn't know what you're talking about. And then she left. Well, I was converted in 1964. But in 1966, tragedy hit our home. Our home burned up. The house where I was born and raised in had burned down, and we couldn't rescue Mama. So she died in that fire, but went on home to be with the Lord. But I've never heard my mama. I had a lot of good season of prayer with my mama. But my mama I never heard her pray that prayer asking God to heal this boy. I never heard her praying like that. I'm sure she did. I can't say for sure. As I stand here for many, many times, whenever I'm telling the story, I'll say, thanks, Mama. Because she must have. I don't know. But I do know that she went on home to be with the Lord in 1966. About that time, my grandmother gave her heart and life to the Lord. Marvelously comforted. Marvelously comforted. And these things was happening to me between that time. Boy, I didn't want to talk English. Boy, I was getting deeply involved, I'll tell you. And then my relatives that were Christians, they taught me to become a gospel singer. See, I didn't sing all before that. And when they saw my hand was healed like this, and they put this guitar in my lap, and they showed me how to play it, well, there it is. And so that all got started. Well, not only that, I got to thinking, hey, I'm completely made whole, and I know how to talk English. So I decided to pursue some education through the Braille system. So in 1964, I went to blind school there in Regina. On 2550 Broad Street, there's a blind school. I went there, and it was so exciting that I was going to pursue the whole complete elementary. Right up to to 12th grade. I was so excited about it. I had a job at the same time. And when my mind was made up on it, and I went there in 1964, off and on, and I worked part-time. And in let me go back here. 2 years before my conversion, before I was bedridden, a missionary came to my home, and he preached the gospel. And I took my sawed-off 22, and I was just about going to shoot him. When I found out that he was willing to give his life for me, and he said, if he pulls the trigger, I'm going home to be with the Lord. But all I care is this boy that's going to do this thing to me. If God raises him up and take the gospel, take over where I leave off, that's all I care. If he pulls the trigger, I'm going home to be with the Lord. See, when I was growing up, I've always heard nothing was never good about the white man. But no, that feller was willing to lay down his life for me. Well, now here I'm converted, and I'm healed, and I'm walking around pretty good, and my mind is expanding. Such wonderful, And this guy heard about it, and for curiosity, he came over to my dad's farm. He couldn't believe in how I was walking around, talking normal and everything. But you know what he did? He trained me to be a Christian. He trained me to be a missionary. Well, then, I went to blind school for a while, And while I was going to blind school, like I said, I was going to pursue education all the way now that I'm healed and everything. So I was excited about it. You know, God spoke to me. God spoke to me when I was in my apartment. Don't tell me how He spoke to me, but I know He did. He said, Ernie, I want you to go out to the reservations and be a missionary. That's what I called you for. That's what I raised you up for, and now go on, go. Go on, go. Now, I didn't hesitate. I mean, why should I? But God came along, picked this boy up. This boy really didn't know nothing about nothing. He picked him up. Here he stands. Healed him. Deliver him over that alcohol, because I woke up the next morning at night when I was giving my heart and life to Christ. The next morning I woke up, I had no desire of nicotine, I had no desire of alcohol. Just like that. And I said, God, You've done a lot for me. I'm not going to hesitate. I'm not going to argue. And so I quit my job. I went to my boss. I told him what I was going to do. God must have planned it, because He said, should you decide to change your mind, you come back. The job will be always for you here. The school said, you come back if you decided, and if not, you decide what to do, you come back. We'll give you some more schooling. And this was in 1967, folks. I just grabbed my guitar, grabbed my suitcase, took to the road. I've been on the road ever since. Oh, life is beautiful, folks. This is exciting. This is exciting. And God is so wonderful when we faithfully serve Him. He never fails, folks. I have my wife with me here tonight. Glad to have her with. She plays a big part in my life. Plays a big part. And I remember meeting her. We've known each other for a long, long time. And when I remember, in fact, yesterday, I took her out for dinner yesterday afternoon. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. I believe it was the day before, on the 14th. That's my 14th year. Her and I have been married for 14 years. And she's been a blessing to me. She's still educating me. She's still helping me. And without her, what would I do? But it was really neat how, people say, how did you two meet? And all that, And she was working in one of the cities here in our state here. And I was going around as a missionary hitchhiking, and riding the semi trucks, and presenting a gospel concert to them everywhere I went, Cafes and garages and service stations and laundromat, and I just give an old gospel concert, wherever the opportunity comes. I stopped at her apartment one time, and she had been a widow for quite a while. They asked, I want you to help me out with something. And I said, what's that? And she said, I want you to help me to pray for her husband. And I told her, I said, I would. When I left her apartment, as I closed the door behind me to go, I said, Lord, let it be me. So here we are. No, it really didn't happen that way, really. That's a joke that I've always had. But I tell you, folks, we serve a great God. We serve a great God. And I believe God is just as in the saving business and in the healing business. And like I said, I don't know why God raised me up. I don't know why. But I don't know why God healed me of these paralysis. I don't know why God healed me of this cancer. I'm supposed to be dead about 28 years ago. Supposed to be. But I only know this much. When God said, he that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. I think I know what he's talking about. I'd like to close with a song here called I Gave Him Nothing. Shall I give him all? I gave him my hand, feeble and weak, the thoughts that I think and the words that I speak. I gave him my life, wandering and lost. I gave him nothing till I gave him all. Nothing, nothing. I gave him nothing till I gave him all. I gave him my voice with each melody. I sing of his praise with each breath that I breathe. But all was in vain till I gave him my whole. I gave him nothing till I gave him all. Nothing, nothing. I gave him nothing till I gave him all. I gave him nothing till I gave him all. Folks, we covet your prayers. Lord, my wife and I are missionaries to the Indian people. We ain't seen the conversion that's taking place on the reservation like we like to see. The Indian religion is on the rise. They're still having a big meeting. The A movement is starting up again. And their goal is to get all the white people to leave America and to go back to wherever they came from. But I'll tell you, whenever my people ruffle my feathers, I'll tell you, I get on the platform and I preach. And I'll tell them like it is. I remember back in '73 when that A movement got together over there, and when they went out, things got out of hand up in Pine Ridge. And when I told it like it is, I felt a loaded 30-06 in me. I get those calls every now and then, but folks, help us to pray for revival on reservations. Help us, we covet your prayers. Hey, it's good to be with you. Thank you very much. God bless you.